Ho ho ho, YouTube. Merry Christmas. I'm not going to do a news piece here on Christmas Eve. My news pieces invariably are very depressing. I live in America. There is very little positive news. So we're just going to do something lighter today. And probably tomorrow, and maybe Friday, we'll get back into the news cycle again. Yay. I love Charles Dickens' The Christmas Carol. And I own 5 or 6 different versions of the film. I am missing the Albert Finney musical version, which I need to get. And I believe I'm missing the 1951 version, which is one that I have a very fond memory of. But I've got a number of other ones, both black and white in color. The Patrick Stewart one is excellent and rolls right into the next one I'm going to talk about, because the character of Tiny Tim is the same actor both in the Patrick Stewart version and in the Ross Kemp modern iteration of The Christmas Carol. Now, this version was done for the BBC, hence why the same actor was used as the Patrick Stewart version. And it was done in 2000, and it actually has aged very well. It's only 14 years, but even the music soundtrack, I think, fit well, and the scenes fit well, and the entire film takes place inside a housing complex. One of the urban, quote-unquote, communities that were designed in the late 60s and 70s, early 70s, as supposed to be designed housing for the lower class, which have basically turned out to be prison blocks. Attack of the Block is a good example of what happens in these places, and so is this film. Now, Ross Kemp is a British actor. I caught this years ago on PBS here in the United States, Public Broadcasting System, and which shows a lot of the BBC rebroadcasts, and I didn't remember the name of it. I mean, the actor. I just knew it was a British modern. Fortunately, my friend, Gentleman Gamer, Matt, did remember it. When I asked him, I said, do you have any memory of this? He was able to tell me that it was done by the actor Ross Kemp. And so I was, able to find it. Now, it is not available on DVD. However, I don't know why this happened and how it hasn't been shut down, but it is available here on YouTube. And in fact, my wife and I watched the entire thing just a few days ago through my Roku on my television. My Roku will let me stream YouTube content through my television, so I don't have to worry about any additional cables and things like that. So I can just watch things there. I can't comment or anything, which is why I very rarely ever use the Roku for my YouTube content. But it does allow me to look at things that are longer form if I want to. And this entire film, all an hour and 12 minutes of it, was available on YouTube. So go check it out. It's well worth your time. And this particular version takes place in the modern era, 2000, and our main character is named as Eddie Scrooge as opposed to Ebenezer Scrooge, and changing it from Ebenezer to Edward made perfect sense, but they should have changed his last name. Scrooge is just too iconic. They should have been like, it was Frank Cross in the movie Scrooge with Bill Murray, and that was a good idea to change that. If you kept Scrooge, it would have been, because there's no way to separate our modern era from Charles Dickens' The Christmas Carol. So that was a bit of a flub. The rest of the character names can stay the same because they're, while slightly iconic, they're less keyed to this. And amazingly enough, the name Jacob Marley perfectly fits a black Jamaican. It really does. I was thrilled. I'm like, it does fit it perfectly. So in this version of the story, it starts out with Jacob Marley having a late night encounter that ends very badly for him. Because you see, Jacob Marley and Eddie Scrooge are loan sharks. They live in this housing complex, and they are the loan sharks to the poor. They are preying off of the poverty of the people that can't make it from week to week, and they are giving them incredibly horrible rates for loans. For example, at one point in the film, someone wants a £700 loan to get a plane ticket to Australia to visit his daughter for the last time before he gets too old. and 700 pounds, okay? And Eddie, the loan shark, says, okay, I can give you 10 pounds a week for 10 years. That's a lot of money. That's a really, really lot of money. And that's why they're called loan sharks. And what an interesting take on this is that Jacob Marley comes in, and we start off right the bat. We see him pressuring, squeezing people for money. He's an absolute right bastard. Eddie Scrooge is. He encounters Jacob Marley. It's the ghost of Jacob Marley. He's got 3 gunshot wounds in his chest. He's wearing the chains. Interesting. It gives it a different vibe when you see a black guy wearing those chains. It really does. It gives it a different vibe to it. Even though, in this case, he earned them, because he was a bastard as well. And he says, you're going to get 3 visitors. And that night, the ghost of Christmas Past shows up, and it's Eddie Scrooge's father. So they're tying this in much more intimately with the character than the original Christmas Carol, and I think it works really well. And then he wakes up again the next day. But it's the same day he started at the beginning of the film. So we've got this Groundhog Day thing going. He's being given the chance to replay that same day and do it right. But the second time, he's as much of a bastard as the first time. And then comes the second night. The second time he's lived that day, and the ghost of Christmas Present shows up, and it's Jacob Marley again. He says, but this time of the season, we have to pull double duty, which also means they don't have to have additional actors, and the actor playing Jacob Marley did an excellent job, and I was really glad he got more screen time. I think he did a really nice job, and I liked seeing him there. I enjoyed his portrayal of Jacob Marley, and he was very effective as a revenant, essentially, looking for justice, even if it was just an admission of guilt about Eddie Scrooge's complicity in his killing. Eddie did not kill him. I'll give you spoilers here. But so at the end of the second visit, he wakes up the next day and he does change what happens. But he's doing it for selfish reasons. So he's as much of a bastard as he was the day before. He just is being selfish now. He wants to look good for the woman that walked away from him because he's a loan shark. And she's a nurse, so he tries to impress her. He tries to save some people's lives just to impress her. And he doesn't. He doesn't do it right. Well, I guess he doesn't do the right thing. He does the selfish thing. But that second visit, that second trip, shows him, he begins to see the face of reality. The brutality that the people that he has been preying upon live with every single day. And then he gets the vote, goes to the Christmas future, and it's a boy with the kind of death pallor to his face, but it's just a boy. And he tells the boy, you look familiar. And it's, of course, it's a wonderful prediction of what's going to happen in the future. And he doesn't speak. And there's some really nice him leading him to the showing him what the Christmas future. Bob Cratchit's kid has died. His family's broken apart because his wife had wanted him to quit working for a loan shark, but you can't blame her for that. Who wants to work for a loan shark? And he only works for him because he owes so much money to him. And he sees the bleak reality unmasked. There's nothing, he can't pretend it isn't real now. And then the next day he wakes up and he's finally made the change. And the first thing he does is fire Bob Cratchit. But then he starts to use the money he's accumulated for good. He starts to help people. And he goes back to that woman, Bella, in this film as opposed to Belle, but he tells her that he needs her in his life and that he's willing to wait. He's willing to give her the chance to realize he has changed. He's not being selfish anymore. He's putting other people's needs and wants and desires in front of his own and hoping against hope that they can forgive him. He has achieved redemption. which is, of course, why I love The Christmas Carol so much. It's a story of redemption, and I'm all about redemption. My whole life has been about redemption. Selfishly, my own. And and at the end of the film, you get to see the future, them, and down the line, he and Bill get together, they get married, they have a kid, and the kid is the ghost of Christmas future. That's why he thinks he looked familiar, because he does look familiar. He looks like him and his wife. In the universes, he actually doesn't look much like it, much like Ross Kemp at all. But you get the point. But it made me wonder at the end of the film, and I really enjoyed this. What does Eddie Scrooge do? Okay, with Ebenezer Scrooge, he could still work in loaning people money, just do it ethically. But Eddie Scrooge in this is a criminal. Out and out criminal. So if he stops being a criminal, he can't be a loan shark anymore. What does he do for a living? He's been, from the storyline, he's been a criminal his entire life. He's probably never had a job. And yes, he has some money saved up. Probably a lot of it. But you can't live with that forever. And if he wants to live an ethical, moral life, what does he do next? They don't, of course, answer that question. It's left open. Just the assumption is that he makes a better life for himself, which he seems to have done. But he's got a lot of obstacles in his way. And it makes me wonder, how does he accomplish this? Now, I realize that the UK has a much more significantly extant social safety net than the United States does, but still I don't think it's going to be enough to keep him going forever. And yes, his wife's a nurse, but I don't know how well they get paid. Probably not great. But it does make me wonder, what does Eddie Scrooge do in the future? Obviously he's happy. He's got a family. He's finally learned what it means for happiness and joy. He's finally achieved redemption. And that's what's important. But I happen to really love this version of the film. I recommend you go look at it, and you can look at it here on YouTube. I'm not sure how they get away with it, but somebody's gotten away with it. No algorithm has picked up this movie and alerted the BBC that somebody's stealing their copyright. I'm hoping that my video review of it isn't going to ping them either. But it was a thoroughly enjoyable version. I really liked it. I liked the character of Eddie Scrooge, and I thought it was well played by Ross Kemp, a person that, other than this, I have never encountered, though apparently he's done a number of documentaries and some films, and he's got the kind of a reputation, apparently, of being a badass. But in this, he's a loan shark, so I guess maybe that still falls into the badass category. I liked the way this was filmed, though the fake snow looked very fake. I like some of the tracking shots that were done during the Ghost of Christmas Future section. I think that was quite well done. And it was done on a very tight shooting schedule. Not a whole lot of scenes that had to be done. And they were probably able to do a lot of this on location. So it was probably a very economic film. I can't imagine it cost a great deal to produce. But it was effective, and I quite liked it. And I recommend it. So, tell me, have any of you ever seen this version? And if you have, what did you think? And in the comments below, tell me, what is your favorite version of Charles Dickens' The Christmas Carol?